Alright, let's talk about the Erudition path in Honkai Star Rail. If you've been in the community for a while, you probably already know that Erudition hasn't exactly been the fan favorite. Back when the game launched, it struggled alongside the Hunt path, mostly because there just weren't enough strong characters to make it shine. AoE damage is great in theory, but when the characters didn't have the numbers to back it up, they ended up feeling underwhelming compared to other paths. But things have changed. With new character releases and some sneaky buffs here and there, Erudition units have clawed their way back into the meta. Some of them have gone from meh to absolute powerhouses, capable of melting enemy waves like they're nothing. So today, we're breaking down the best Erudition characters you should be upgrading if you want solid long-term value. Let's get into it. I'm quickly moving on to the video. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching! Serval. If you played Honkai Star Rail during the early days, you probably remember how much of a powerhouse she was. With her solid AoE lightning damage, she carried a lot of teams through the tough battles of Guerrilla 6. She was fun, flashy, and had that cool rockstar vibe that made her stand out. But as the game expanded, more characters joined the roster, and Serval, well, kind of faded into the background. It's not that she's bad, she's just been outclassed in almost every way. Take Kafka, for example. If you want to apply and trigger DOT effects, she does it better and more consistently. And if raw lightning AoE damage is what you're after, Acheron makes it look effortless. Serval still has a decent kit, but compared to these top-tier units, she just doesn't pack the same punch. Her damage potential is limited, and her reliance on shock effects means she needs a very specific setup to shine, one that other characters don't need nearly as much. That said, if you're a fan of Serval, she's still totally usable, especially in the early to mid-game. She's great for clearing waves of enemies, and her shock effect can be fun to play around with. Plus, if you're into building characters you genuinely like rather than just chasing meta picks, there's nothing wrong with keeping her in your lineup. But if you're looking for the most efficient way to dish out AoE lightning damage, it's safe to say that Serval isn't the best option anymore. Himeko has had quite the journey in Honkai Star Rail. When the game first launched, she was widely regarded as one of the weakest standard 5 stars. Even if you maxed out her Eidolons and gave her a top-tier light cone, she just couldn't pull her weight. The biggest issue? Her follow-up attack, which was supposed to be her signature mechanic, was frustratingly inconsistent, especially in tougher endgame content where enemies had massive toughness bars. This left her feeling underwhelming compared to other damage dealers, making her a hard sell for most players. But over time, things started looking up for Himeko. The introduction of characters like Ruan Mei and Harmony Trailblazer provided her with the kind of support she desperately needed. These units made it much easier to break enemy toughness, allowing Himeko to trigger her follow-up attacks more frequently. Then came the Pure Fiction game mode, which rewarded AoE-focused characters like her. With waves of enemies constantly spawning, she finally had the perfect stage to unleash her full potential. So, where does she stand now? She's definitely not the best Erudition character in the game, but she's far from the weakest. If you enjoy her playstyle and love watching her burn through waves of enemies, she's absolutely worth building. While she might never be a meta-defining unit, she's gone from being a disappointing pull to a solid pick for certain game modes. Qingque is easily one of the most entertaining characters in Honkai Star Rail, and it's not just because of her laid-back, mahjong-loving personality. She basically lets you play a mini gacha game inside the actual gacha game. Her skill allows you to draw tiles repeatedly in a single turn, and if you manage to get all 4 matching tiles, her next basic attack hits like a truck. It's a fun, high-risk, high-reward playstyle that makes every turn feel a little unpredictable. Now, if you're in need of a solid quantum DPS but don't have a 5-star option, Qingque is actually a fantastic pick. Sure, she's a bit unreliable at times since her damage depends on RNG, but when the stars align, or in this case the tiles, she can dish out some serious damage. And if you're lucky enough to have her Eidolons, things get even better. She gains the chance to trigger a follow-up attack with every basic attack, making her even more explosive in battle. At the end of the day, Qingque is a character that thrives in the hands of players who love a bit of chaos. She's not the most consistent DPS out there, but she's definitely one of the most fun. If you enjoy a little gamble in your gameplay and don't mind playing around her RNG mechanics, she's an excellent investment, especially for those lacking a strong quantum unit. Herta might have started off as one of Honkai Star Rail's most underwhelming characters, but she's had a surprising glow-up thanks to the introduction of Pure Fiction mode. In the early days, most players saw her as little more than a freebie character, with flashy but unimpressive attacks. Her follow-up mechanic was neat, but it rarely packed enough punch to make her a serious contender in tougher battles. However, all of that changed when Pure Fiction rolled around and suddenly, Herta had the perfect playground to shine. This game mode heavily rewards follow-up attacks, and guess what? That's Herta's entire gimmick. On top of that, Pure Fiction frequently features Ice-weak enemies and waves of smaller mobs. Exactly the kind of scenario where Herta's ability to chain follow-up attacks becomes ridiculously effective. In this mode, she goes from being a forgettable character to an absolute powerhouse, easily mowing down enemies as long as they dip below 50% HP. If you're trying to climb the ranks in Pure Fiction, she's hands down one of the best characters to invest in. That being said, outside of this specific mode, Herta is still, well, Herta. She doesn't scale well for boss fights, and in general content, her damage falls off pretty hard. So while she's basically an S-tier pick for Pure Fiction, don't expect her to suddenly become a top-tier pick elsewhere. If you're playing for fun, she's a great choice. But if you're looking for a character with long-term versatility, you might want to look elsewhere. Jing Yuan has had one of the most up-and-down journeys in Honkai Star Rail's meta. When he first launched, he was insanely popular. After all, who wouldn't want to play as the stylish and powerful general of the Luofu? But it didn't take long for players to realize that while his animations were flashy, his performance didn't quite match the hype. His follow-up attack took too long to activate, and the damage often didn't justify the wait, causing him to fall out of favor in the meta pretty quickly. However, things started to change with the introduction of characters like Sparkle and Jade. These supports gave Jing Yuan the boost he needed, helping him cycle his abilities faster and maximize his damage potential. With the right setup, his Lightning Lord can actually dish out some serious destruction, making him far more viable in battle. That being said, without these specific supports, he still struggles to reach his full potential, making him a bit of a niche pick compared to other DPS options. So, where does that leave him? If you have the right team, Jing Yuan can still be a powerhouse, but he's far from a plug-and-play unit. He requires investment and proper synergy to shine, which means he's not for everyone. But if you're willing to build around him, and let's be honest, his design alone makes it tempting, he can absolutely hold his own in high-level content. Argenti is a classic case of a character with massive potential, but only if you're willing to build an entire team around him. On paper, his kit is pretty exciting. Being able to stack his ultimate up to 2 times gives players a fun choice. Fire it off early for decent damage or save up for a massive AoE nuke. But in practice, this mechanic is held back by one huge issue: his terrible energy regeneration. Without proper support, Argenti struggles to generate enough energy to make full use of his ultimate, making his damage output feel underwhelming. That's where characters like Ting Yun and Huo Huo come in, providing the much-needed energy sustain to keep him going. If you're lucky enough to have these units, Argenti suddenly transforms from a mediocre DPS into an absolute monster, wiping out entire waves with his ultimate. And if you add in an action-advancing support like Bronya or Sparkle, he becomes even deadlier, letting him cycle his turns faster. The downside? If you don't have these key supports, Argenti is pretty rough to use. He's not the kind of unit you can just throw onto any team and expect great results. But if you're willing to invest in the right setup, he can be an incredibly satisfying DPS to play. His flashy ultimate and stylish design make him a fun addition to any roster, as long as you're ready to work around his energy issues. Jade is the Erudition enabler that Honkai Star Rail desperately needed. Not only is she a powerhouse on her own, but she also elevates other Erudition characters, making them far more viable than before. Her signature ability, the Debt Collector effect, lets her gain charge stacks based on how many enemies an ally attacks. Naturally, this means that AoE units, like Argenti or Herta, are her ideal partners, allowing her to rack up stacks ridiculously fast and dish out massive damage in return. What makes Jade truly special is her long-term potential. Erudition units have often struggled to stay relevant in the meta, but Jade flips that narrative completely. As long as new AoE characters keep getting released, she'll continue to be an amazing support pick, ensuring that she remains a top-tier unit for a long time. She doesn't just make one character better, she buffs an entire playstyle, which is rare and incredibly valuable. If you're someone who enjoys running AoE-heavy teams, Jade is an absolute must-pull. She not only boosts the damage of some previously underwhelming characters, but she also secures her place in future team comps. Whether you're a longtime Erudition fan or just looking for a versatile support, Jade is one of the best investments you can make. Rappa is a monster when it comes to Honkai. Star Rail's break-based playstyle, and it's no surprise she ranks so highly. Breaking an enemy's toughness isn't just about disabling them, it's about chaining massive super break DMG, especially with the right supports. And the best part? You don't even need premium units to make her shine. Free supports like Harmony Trailblazer already give her a ton of value, making her one of the most accessible top-tier units in the game. Her ultimate is the real game changer. Instead of just dealing big damage in one hit, it lets her unleash multiple special basic attacks in a row, each one shredding toughness like paper. This means that as long as the main enemy has imaginary weakness, Rappa can pretty much dominate the battlefield in just a few turns. She's one of those rare characters who can consistently control the fight while also dishing out serious damage, making her an incredible pick for any team. If you're a fan of break-focused gameplay, Rappa is hands down one of the best investments you can make. She's not just strong, she's reliable, flexible, and works incredibly well with both free and premium units. Whether you're up against tanky bosses or groups of enemies, Rappa's kit ensures they won't be standing for long. The Herta is an absolute powerhouse in Honkai Star Rail, and honestly it's hard to even be surprised given her backstory. As one of the first characters the Trailblazer meets, it's fitting that she's not just a support, but a full-blown Erudition emanator. From the start, you knew she had the potential to be strong, but the real shocker is just how far above the competition she really is. The gap between her damage and the second-place character isn't just wide, it's staggering. When you see numbers like Herta's, you know you're dealing with something special. Her normal skill can deal over 200,000 damage, and her ultimate? Over 500,000, which is already insane. But that's not all. When her skill is buffed, she can easily cross the million damage mark. What makes all of this even more incredible is that she can achieve these numbers even with a fully F2P build and a non-meta team composition. Add in her signature light cone or the best team members, and you've got a character who can delete enemies in the blink of an eye. If you're looking for an Erudition character who not only holds her own but dominates, the Herta is your go-to. Whether you're focusing on raw damage or want a character who can effortlessly carry your team through tough battles, Herta checks all the boxes. There's no need to overthink it. Her sheer power speaks for itself, and she's a must-have for anyone who wants to run an insanely strong Erudition comp. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.